If you were to rank the most recognizable characters from Star Wars, especially if you count those who aren't fans, there are a few, I think, that would rise to the top. Chewbacca comes to mind, C-3PO, and R2-D2. But in light of recent Star Wars-related content, I believe Yoda would be the most recognizable. His small, innocent, yet strange appearance belies the power within, which gives a father feel to the creature. He is wise, caring, and most of all, sounds like Grover. What I want to do with this video is explore the creation of Yoda and how Jimhenson's Creature Shop played an important role. When George Lucas realized he would need to replace Obi-Wan due to the failing health of the actor who played him, Alec Guinness, George decided on a wise character to help Luke move forward. Once he decided on who that would be, he realized that he would need help putting him together.
But I write it and then I say, well, now how am I going to do this? How am I going to pull this off? And I decided to do it as a puppet. I thought that was the best. And so I'd known Jimhenson, and I went to Jim and said, do you want to do this? Because I really asked Jim to do it first. And he said, well, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm making a movie and all, and I really can't, but how about, Frank? Frank's the other half of me and everything. And I said, well, that would be fantastic.
Yoda would play a pivotal role in the trilogy, so he had to find someone who was talented with creatures, animatronics, and someone who was above all else creative. George had in mind someone like Kermit, friendly yet wise. Naturally, his mind landed on the immensely successful Jimhenson. So around 1978, George approached Henson for help and asked him to consult and perform Yoda. Jim was far too busy with filming movies and specials, but suggested his other half, Frank Oz. George said that would be fantastic, and so began the Henson Company's involvement with Star Wars and Yoda. In Laurent Bousserou's book Star Wars The Annotated Screenplays, George Lucas says he wanted Yoda to be the traditional kind of character you find in fairy tales and mythology. The creation of Yoda, as you can imagine, has several different versions. Stuart Freeborn, the makeup supervisor and a special effects artist, had been asked to figure Yoda out, but after many different models he couldn't get it to work. Frank Oz came in and attempted to help nail it down, but the work was going too slowly. In Laurent Bousserou's book Star Wars The Annotated Screenplay, Froud recalls that Jimhenson said to Frank Oz, "Why don't you let Wendy come in as she can sculpt and make puppets?" Wendy was a doll artist, a sculptor, a Muppet maker, and a writer, and she's best known for her work with Yoda, being known as the mother of Yoda. Where Stuart could make a model in a few weeks, Wendy Froud and Oz could knock out 5 in a day. Wendy would cut him out of foam with scissors and razor blades on the spot. This helped advance the creation of the look of Yoda by allowing them to see a new version quickly, as opposed to days. Nick Maley, an Emmy-winning VFX artist and the senior tech in the Creature Shop, has written extensively on his blog, Those Yoda Guys, about the 10-month process of creating Yoda and Froud's role in that process. She single-handedly formed the body out of 1-inch sheet foam. If I remember correctly, she also modeled Yoda's hands and feet and single-handedly fabricated the stand-in for Yoda. It was made entirely from cut foam, which was used to line up shots during the camera setup. I do remember her spending some time working on the clay models of Yoda's heads, too. The other version of the story is the reverse, where Oz was unable to come up with a decent model, and George asked Stuart to come in and see if he could make it work. But in an unearthed interview with the man himself, Stuart, he says that a puppet had to be made first.
But first of all, a puppet was made to get some idea what it would look like in 3 dimensions rather than just a drawing. And this little fella was made purely for that. And as you can see, he's quite an interesting little character.
Regardless of how it happened, Stuart ultimately was the creator of Yoda as we know him today, with the help of Oz and Wendy. Stuart spent 5 months alone in the sculpting phase for the creation of Yoda's face. Stuart brought in illustrator Ralph McQuarrie and concept artist Joe Johnston to aid in the creative process. According to Nick Maley, Yoda looked like a cross between Yoda and Jiminy Cricket. The proportions of Jiminy with Yoda's round face and pointy ears. He seemed younger and rather impish. This makes sense because Lucas wanted something close to Kermit, but this obviously wouldn't work since he also wanted the appearance of wisdom and age. Stuart eventually sculpted the face to look like a combination of himself and Albert Einstein to give the air of intelligence and the wisdom of age. Nick Malley said, "A picture of Einstein ended up on the wall behind the Yoda sculptures, and the wrinkles around Einstein's eyes somehow got worked into Yoda's design." Over the course of this evolutionary process, Yoda slowly changed from the comparatively sprightly, tall, skinny grasshopper kind of character into the old, wise, spirited gnome that we all know today. Once the final form emerged, Stewart realized that he left out one important piece. Yoda had to be performed, and if the creature was designed around the performer, none of his designs would work or would matter. He was a talented special effects artist, not a puppeteer. Yoda himself wasn't actually a puppet. He was an animatronic creature mixed with puppet elements. It was Wendy Froud who ended up making Yoda work. She worked with Stewart to bring Yoda to the correct size to fit Oz's arm and hand. She also helped devise the function of the ears. In the end, it all came together for the film and allowed Oz to perform Yoda in a way that obviously left a lasting impact. The voice and speech pattern were all Frank Oz as well. In an interview, Oz said, "It's funny you ask about that because I was just looking at the original script from The Empire Strikes Back the other day, and there was quite a bit of that old, odd syntax in it, but also it had Yoda speaking very colloquially. So I said to George, can I do the whole thing like this? And he said, sure, it just felt right." It's obvious that it took the hands of masterful craftsmen from all sides to create Yoda, but it cannot be denied that the Jimhenson Company left their mark on one of the most beloved franchises in the history of filmmaking, Star Wars. Thanks for watching.